We'll do it live.
Hello and welcome to Under the Sticks, a podcast and broadcast brought to you by Pro14 Rugby. My name is Andy McGeady. With me this evening on the week ahead of the Guinness PRO14 Final, I have live from the racket stringing room, Mr. Paul Williams. How are you?
I am very well, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm doing fine. My internet was connected. I'm the happiest first world man this side of everywhere. I really am.
It's really weird seeing you not pixelated. For
Give
the
it time.
last 8 weeks, you've looked like you've been made Lego.
It's been bad. That's when I've been actually communicating to the world, other than it's just sort of frozen. Dean Bud, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Had a very relaxing day today. The gym's water system failed, so the gym was closed. So my didn't have to make up any excuses to not go today. Just chilled at home.
It's okay. Just be truthful. Own it.
Yeah.
I'm not going. Sean Holley, you've got a home gym. How are you?
I have, but today's a day off. It's golf day today, Wednesday, mate, and podcast day. So Under the Sticks and the recording of Analyst Eye, which hopefully we'll talk about later on. Busy day today, and had to change a tire on the car.
Oof.
Who did you ask for help?
Real man.
Yeah. It's very
I went down to Tidy Tires in the village.
It's a bit of a plug.
Yeah. Tidy Tires, if you want to sponsor the show, please get in touch with the producer. Ian Gilbert, hello from Madrid. James E. Cowan, hello Durham. As always, we're going out live, so get involved on Facebook, get along on YouTube. The best comment or question of the evening, thanks to Bear Hug, we'll be giving away some gear. Bear Hug, they are the bamboo joint support and muscle sleeve specialists. Paul, I'm still loving that short read. It is great.
Game changer, that was.
It is. Michael Jenkins, hello, West Wales. It's great. The regulars are all in, boys. It's great. And it's a good week for it. We had 2 semi-finals last week. We have the final coming up. That's pretty much it. That's all we're here for today. Let's go first. Final, Leinster versus Ulster. I think it's safe to say, Sean, we didn't call this unanimously last week on the Ulster side of the draw.
I think we unanimously went for Edinburgh, and the form book probably said that, and Ulster were struggling a little bit, stuttering, but Edinburgh, fired up. Probably picked a weakened team against Glasgow in the second sort of rubber, but all the pointers, all the stats and the form said an Edinburgh Leinster final. But what a second half from Ulster! It was an amazing performance. They increased the tempo, their speed of ball went up, the number of passes and offloads went up, and they sort of played a bit more like Ulster had played in the earlier part of the season. So they found their mojo again because they had to. That's what knockout rugby brings you. So it was a great fit. It was a brilliant game to watch. I don't know if you watched it all. I watched it live, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm pleased for Dwayne Peel, one of my former players, and Dan McFarland. They just got to give it the same sort of go this week because Leinster are a bit of a juggernaut, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are. Paul, I watched the Leinster game live. I watched the Ulster game back. There's no question in my mind which was the game of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I enjoyed them both, but I will literally watch any rugby regardless. But I thought the Ulster game was fantastic, and I think what it proved is, I've written about it in the column this week, knockout rugby does not care about anything. Doesn't care who you signed. Doesn't care how many tackles you haven't missed, as in Hamish Watson. Doesn't care about your golden boot kicking percentage of 90%. It's just on a day, and it's only the points. And I loved it. And it's interesting to see those who cope, those who don't, the difference between, the Johnny Sextons and the Madigans, and then the ones who sort of just fell a little bit short. I thought it was fantastic. Really enjoyed both.
So, Dean, what when you look back at both of the games over the weekend, what jumps out to you before we get into sort of what it might tell us for the final?
Well, I think the coolest thing about it was Madigan, really. I mean, he's been just playing B-grade footy for the last year at Bristol, not getting any love or anything. And I obviously got to plug myself. I spoke about Ulster, saying if they could just hang in the game. We've seen Cooney win so many games with that last-minute kick, and he was actually off, and it was Madigan that did it this time around. But yeah, just such just a gritty performance from Ulster, and it showed. I think we saw a lot of tries over the weekend from mauls, line-out mauls, how that's becoming such a weapon in the game at the moment. So it's such a hard thing to stop, and I think we'll see loads more of it from Ulster against Leinster next weekend, or this weekend, sorry.
I think McCloskey and Coetzee were really impressive as well in that second half. They carried so well, especially McCloskey. He was fantastic.
Yeah, watch Analyst Eye tomorrow. That was a key point. Well spotted, Williams.
See, I am learning, Sean. I'm picking it all up.
Coetzee was in terms of numbers, the highest ball carrier for them. But McCloskey, they sort of worked in tandem, so they complemented one another. Coetzee really stepped up to the plate. And that's what you want from your overseas player, your marquee sort of player. He's been a little bit quiet, but my goodness, he stepped up. McCloskey has done this for a while for me. I know he doesn't seem to fit the mold of an Irish coach for selection at the moment, but he's very effective. He's more than just a crash ball guy, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing I wrote about in the column was that, it's talking about Coetzee. So he made, I think it was 19 carries only for 18 yards, which doesn't seem that big a deal, is it, for an 8? And I think people tend to think unless an 8's carried 50, they haven't done much. But of course, you need to remember, someone had to tackle Coetzee 19 times, didn't they? And tackling
it's normally more than one person. And Dean will tell you this, right? Yeah. But you came in on this because some of those carries are the most important carries, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, that's sucking 2 or 3 in, getting them tight so you create a little bit of space. And I saw the footwork of Little, the winger for Ulster. He was just absolutely incredible. So you can think Coetzee doing all that work, all that kind of those hard yards to give him just a half a yard more to kind of stand someone up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny, the thing when you say Coetzee has been a little bit quiet over time, he was also a lot injured. And to have this run where we're seeing the player that Ulster thought they signed, and that was a player who can bring them potentially silverware. Like that's the level of player, one of the best in the world at his position. You're talking about when he has the ball, when he hasn't got the ball, he's a power as well. And it's great seeing a player like that with that ability and playing well on the big day.
Yeah, I mean, his work in defense, so I think hasn't even been touched on, but I think I saw him win two penalty turnovers, maybe 3. Those change the game just as much as any carry ever will.
Yeah, his bloody arms, they're enormous, absolutely enormous. Right, I'm gonna ask Adam to fire up a couple of comments here, because we're gonna go first quickly through the Leinster Munster game, because every week I say this, we try and shoot it straight in this pod. It was not the most exciting game of sport I have ever seen in my life, right? Chiefs girl, welcome. You're up with the coffee. That is a absolutely ferocious achievement. I regret getting up with the Leinster game. It was crap. One of the most boring games I've ever watched. Thank God the other semi was good. Not all knockout rugby is good.
No,
right?
They're too scared.
In fact, exactly, right? Sometimes knockout rugby isn't great, but you still have to win, and you find a way to win. Sean, there was a bit of talk during the week about Munster perhaps relying on the box kick too much, etc., etc. What did you see in that game?
Not a lot. I think they'd put some pressure the game before on Jordan Lama and got some success out of it. They got some change out of it. Also, and if you've been watching analysts, Murray and I have been picking up that, their conversion rate in the 22 has been poor. They haven't been able to unlock the door, not just against Leinster, but other teams as well. And I did say last week, didn't I, was the double red card Connacht game good preparation? Well, no, it wasn't, was it? Because it became a training run. So they probably realised that and tried to go in an arm wrestle and win an aerial battle and feed off scraps. I personally think that's the wrong way to tackle Leinster. It's the wrong way to tackle Munster in their prime. And I keep saying this sort of thing all the time. In knockout rugby, you either try and go out and win it, or you try and go out and not lose it. And Munster tried and went out to not lose the game. And you don't do that against Leinster because they get you in all departments in their performance, in the stats, in the selection, in the depth of squad. So don't do that. Do what Ulster did in the second half. Go out, throw a little bit of caution to the wind, and try and win it, because Leinster, I believe, were there for the taking. They have not been firing all cylinders, but they can still win by not firing on all cylinders. So go out and bloody win it. We didn't really see Farrell and Dale Andy. We built them up. And, it came down really, didn't it, to one error from Keith Earls, but they manipulated that Leinster from the scrum play. They moved them about, really good gain line, bang, 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 put pressure on him and then scored from the set piece. But that's really all they need. It's almost like a UFC fight. Don't let Leinster have one choke on you, because you'll have to tap out. You've got to go and run around the ring, and then it's a tough thing to do. It's really hard to do, because if you look back to Ulster, honestly, Edinburgh were away, weren't they? And then Ulster only really kicked into their game because of that, and to do that from the start is very, very difficult. So I just think Munster are lacking. I think they are lacking tactically as much as anything. I really do. I've watched them a lot in the restart now, and they can't find a way. They cannot.
It's boring, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is boring. Yeah. And I think because it nearly worked, didn't it? Because the box kick, and they did get a few turnovers and a few penalties. But if you don't kick those penalties, it's pointless. I mean, if you don't kick the balls on the 10-meter line, it's pointless having the pen or the knock on from the box kick. And they looked like there was no other option, didn't they? Especially when Conway went off. You're just left with Earls then to make, whatever, the odd 20-meter, 30-meter break. Whereas if you look at Leinster, even though they didn't actually do that, they've got, 5 or 6 guys who can make you 20, 25 meters, a clean break, and then an offload, and they're off. I mean, they didn't do that, but the threat of having those players makes a difference. And Munster don't seem to have that.
So what else? You wrote about Leinster a bit in your column this week, Paul. What else were you saying?
Well, I just said that the way that Leinster won was very unlike them, because normally, it's all about James Lowe and it's all about ring rows, and a big flashy 30-meter break for the middle from Lama and an offload, and they're under the post. But it wasn't like that. I mean, it fell perfectly into Sean's theory of conversion rates when you get into the 22. And that's what Leinster did. When they got in, kick the pen. When they get in, kick the pen. One try, 13 points in total. It's not like they took points every time they went in. But when they did, they did the knockout rugby thing, get the points and out, and it was enough. And it just goes to show, annoyingly, unless you're a Leinster fan, not only are they better at all of the glorious bits of rugby, those sort of super rugby bits that we like watching, they're actually better at the Munster bits as well. And that's what they did.
I love the way Chiefs Girl calls me Holley. Absolutely correct, Holley. Does that mean I can call you girl?
No, should be calling you Holster now. So.
Thank you, girl. No, thanks, Brad. Can I also mention Simon Harris? Hello from Port Talbot. Port Talbot's where I'm from, and there's been a great article in the rugby paper this week by Peter Jackson, the esteemed long-serving writer, about Regan Grace in St Helens Rugby. He's from Port Talbot, and we have a long history of actors, sports people from our town. We're a steel town, small town, and would you believe Richard Burton, Anthony Hopkins, Rob Brydon, James Hook, Richard Hibbert, obviously, and then we've got all sorts.
Sheen,
Michael Sheen
is from there as well, isn't he?
Yeah, we've got all sorts. And I'll have people tweeting in, but yeah. So thanks for joining us, Simon. That's great.
And now back in non-Port Talbot land. But I like what Chief Girl says there, because if you want to play against the best teams, you kind of have to take a risk, because if you were going to go for that, not lose the game, and in fairness, Sean, I'd come back to you on that. So what?
Sam Padavlo, you got it. You got it.
Do you know, when the rugby career winds down and you end up in the autumnal years, you could work for the Patalba Tourist Board. I think that's where you're headed.
Sam Padavlo.
But if you go back
what did you say, Ned?
I was going to say, like, if you're going to be the team that says, I'm going to stand toe-to-toe with the Leinsters or the Saracens or the All Blacks, and you say, right, we're going to not lose. We're going to stay in this just long enough so that we get a bit of luck, or, you know, you have a player who can score. And we talked last week about if you have Earls and you have Conway, you've got a chance, right? So I don't think that was a terrible way to start the game in a game plan, but it doesn't feel good when you lose that way, because you might feel as if you haven't thrown a shot.
You got to score, mate, right? So you look on. I'm a stats man, right? So this isn't my theory, as Paul said. These are the facts. You know, you've got to score probably. I don't know this stat, but it's probably on average you need to score 21 points to beat Leinster.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Roughly
probably what you need to score, right? Yeah. And therefore, if you score 3, you're not going to win. Right? No matter how much you stay in the arm wrestle, they are going to score. That they are the facts. So, you know, I revert back to a couple of the Ospreys wins in the finals. Then you knew you were going to concede points, so you have to go out and plan to try and score them. And that might involve just a little bit of risk. You know, if you can get them in the 15 channel, or you get them down the 10 channel, or you get them on the 4th phase here, you've got to plan that and go for it. You know, the rest of the time your nuts and bolts need to be spot on anyway. Did they ever tell you? I forgot how many did we win, but it's been a long time ago. But but there is a recipe, and at the moment, and that used to be a Munster recipe, you know, but it's gone. Yeah. It's gone, and I'm not saying it's the coaching. I'm not saying it's the players. It could be just a combination of both.
Can I fact check you on one thing before you come in? October the 29th, 2019, not so long ago, Leinster scored 3 points and won the game.
Yes, they did. I remember. That was what you voted that one of your favourite games ever.
It is one of my favourite games ever.
I remember you doing that early on in lockdown.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention, if you need to score 21 points and you're planning on doing it from box kicking and penalties, that's 7 penalties that you need. So that means you probably need 10 or 11 kickable penalty opportunities to convert 7. That's a lot. That's not going to happen, is it? You're not going to get 10 kickable penalties.
No, I'd imagine Leinster, I mean, as a stat, I'd probably say they're one of the best out there. That average probably less than around the 8-9 penalties a game. Exactly. So you're never going to get those chances.
Yeah, the maths just aren't there, are they?
No.
Dennis Murray's come in with a comment here, which is, I think it's fair, saying, do you think it's a bit lazy to say that, and this could be on me, say that Munster should start throwing the ball around in the rain against the champions? It was slippy.
Who said they should start throwing the ball around in the rain? Are you not listening? No, we never said that.
Grumpy Sean.
Well, no, we never said that. You've got to work out a little bit of another way than box kicking in the air when you get just outside Leinster's 22. That's all we're saying. Work out a strategy to move them around and find a different way, you know, because statistically that isn't going to beat Leinster. You might get lucky. Lama might drop a few balls, but, you know, I think Munster have just lacked that in the last couple of semi-finals. They've lacked it in the doubleheader prior to the build-up to the semi-final, and we didn't see enough because Leinster were I do believe were there for the taking, and not necessarily by just throwing it around.
But the damning stats from that final, when I was looking through them, and admittedly these aren't the hyper detailed stats you've probably been looking through, Sean, but Munster carried under 100 metres, right, for the whole game. I can't remember the last time I saw under 100 metres carried and 0 clean breaks. So normally in the Pro 14, you'd probably expect to see 300 metres carried, say like 250, 350. Super Rugby, they tend to be sort of 450 to 550. To be under 100 metres, that means you didn't actually clear the pitch once. roughly.
Yeah.
And that, you didn't go up the field once in NFL terms. That's quite damning.
It is funny. I'm actually looking at some of the comments coming in. Jamesy Cowan, get Grumpy Sean a copy. I love when Grumpy Sean joins because you get real truth when Grumpy Sean comes in. And we've seen Grumpy Sean even at 8:30 in the morning on the old Super Rugby out here. Just you never know when it comes.
I don't like people saying things that I've said that I haven't said. I never said that. So I did say that Ulster started passing more and offloading more. They are facts, and the speed of ball went up, and therefore their average gain in their carries went up. So they are facts. But I never said that Munster needed to just throw it around in the wet against Leinster. Perhaps they should have tried that.
Could have tried. Go, Adam. You joined us
here because yes, I've just jumping in for a point of information. So I was fortunate and privileged enough to actually be in the stadium last Friday night. And I can tell you, to describe that game as wet is weak.
Is it?
Go on. Go further.
Sprinkling of rain before the game. There was maybe a little bit during the game. And as Paul said a couple of weeks ago and wrote in his column, in terms of, you want some sort of indicator on TV to tell you what exactly the weather's like. Look, it may have created greasy conditions, but that pitch is perfect. You're playing with the best ball in the world. I'm sorry, that's not an excuse for a team like Munster, who pride
Grumpy Adam has just rode in on his stallion.
Yeah, Punchy Adam. I prefer Punchy Adam.
I just think I had a bit of information to add. And
Good info.
Help.
It's good. Well, there we are.
So anyway.
Adam slammed his excuse.
Some about Fred Healy. Fred Healy's got his hashtag now. Hashtag Are you not listening?
Are you not listening? That's
class.
Good.
Class.
Nice little catchphrase there for Holley. Are you not listening?
To go back to Chiefs Girl, yes, that genuinely happened. There was a game. It was so late October 2019. Sure, around the World Cup period. Leinster Zebre in Italy. 3-0 final score. It really happened. And it brought me back to playing in school. I think at a 3-3 draw one day. It was on a small, when you play on a pitch which is so short, it's almost square.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
I was playing fullback and the entire game just kicked it fullback to fullback to fullback to fullback the whole game. Yeah, it just brought me back. A couple of comments. I think people are genuinely going for the proper... the championship, the bear hug gear. Gath and Lock. Does Paul Williams not own a glass?
Right.
That is very astute observation.
Right. Now, do you know what? I'll take issue with this. I've got an open gullet, okay, which means that I can drink an awful lot very quickly. So having a glass is pointless. So I can drink a pint in about, the boys can go at RFC will know. So I can do a pint in about 3.5 seconds. Guinness, I can do in about 2.5 because it hasn't got any bubbles. Bit of product placement there, Adam. So I need 2 litres by my side to keep me going.
Do you find it loses the fizz though, drinking out of the bottle?
Yeah, but I don't mind that.
Okay.
It's just the quantity. It's just the quantity. I just need to have 2 litres of pop all the time. Yeah.
Do you have 2 litres a day, mate?
Oh, I won't even tell you how much I drink a day. It's sugar-free. It's sugar-free. It's always sugar-free, but I drink possibly 6 litres a day.
Oh, man. I couldn't. Like, even one can of fizz now.
Any medical experts listening, watching, please pass comment on the reduction in Paul Williams' lifespan for drinking 6 litres of fizzy pop.
On top of that, maybe 10 to 15 cups of tea. About maybe at least another 2 or 3 litres of water.
Yeah.
Just constantly drinking. And why am I saying this to the world? Somebody call it football.
Oh, God. That's the sugar-free ones are worse for you, aren't they?
I know.
I don't know. I don't know the theory on that, but somehow I heard it somewhere along the way that
they work differently on the body, Dean, and that's all I'm going with that. And someone out there will get what I mean. Chiefs girl, no, I'm not South African. It was a really short pitch. I mean, I'm 5'10". It was an incredibly short pitch, right? We need to move on. So Leinster Munster, not the greatest game in the world. We didn't learn much about Leinster other than, yes, they were able to just win in a fairly, well, Dean, you called it, boring way. Munster, another semi-final loss. That's the one which will rankle a bit with fans. They've now lost a lot of semi-finals and they're going to have to get to the next stage. But let's move on to the next game because Edinburgh Ulster was an absolute cracker. Edinburgh absolutely dominated. And then Ulster just found something. And it was a great toe-to-toe game of knockout rugby. Paul?
Yeah,
talk to me about this enjoyable game.
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. Edinburgh started really well. My big takeout from it, which I put in as a question to Sean Holley earlier, but apparently he refused to put it on his other podcast, which he does with another member.
It's not a podcast. It's a very astute analytical rugby show with Murray Kinsella.
There we are. Analysis content.
Yeah, Paul. Apparently, we're supposed to call this a show now.
It's a broadcast. But it was the one thing I'm a massive fan, right, of Duan van der Merwe. But I'm wondering how long he can do that one-handed carry for as he keeps moving through the ranks. So he's going to be playing test rugby almost immediately, isn't he? He'll go straight into the starting lineup. He's almost looking British Lionsy, right? Can he be carrying that ball, Dean, in one hand into contact in test rugby? I don't think he can. And that's the one thing I always think now whenever I watch him play.
Depends how big those mitts are, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not seeing him lose a lot of ball. So I guess, it's not a great look. We've seen it. We've seen every Fijian do it for years and to a lot of good success. So, yeah, I tell you who, you don't change a winning formula. Let him do what he can keep on doing, I reckon.
Yeah. I tell you who won't like that is Warren Gatlin. I can't imagine he's a big fan of the one-handed ball wave.
Yeah. It's strange, but he's damn good and he gets those offloads away most of the time as well. So
keep doing what Jesus. Keep doing what
you're doing. He's on. You can tell he's on the Guinness tonight, can you? You can tell.
Yeah. He's fast and loose.
Actually, I'll give him Adam. I'll drink to that one. Well done.
It is good. That one. That's the old journalist.
It is. Keep doing what you're doing. I will drink to that. But Sean, if you look at the game, you said earlier on something which was that Ulster kind of, it's not that they waited until the game was gone, but the game was gone, so they had to try something.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, well, look, Edinburgh have one of the best defensive records in this season in the Pro 14, right? So they're tough to break down. A lot of defenders on feet. Don't give many penalties away. So they did try to unlock that, but then I think they just realised, look, and I think it came after halftime. They must have spoken about a halftime. They just weren't getting 2 or 3 pass chains. It was that sort of one-up stuff, which falls into that physical prowess of defence of Edinburgh. And I was looking at it thinking, and then there was a bit of a turnover. They got their try, and then Hamish Watson broke through, and then straight away Edinburgh went even further ahead again. I'm thinking, that could be the killer blow. And it just seemed to me that a couple of things happened, right? Ball started to stick a little bit. They were making more passes. They were going out the back and getting 2-3 pass chains into the wider channels. That pushed the Edinburgh gain line back a little bit. That puts them under pressure. They started giving penalties away.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, then they get into the 22 a little bit because they kick in there. Now, Ulster, Rob Herring's got a great try-scoring record. If they get in there, they've got a chance, even as good as Edinburgh's maul defence is. And that's what happened. That pressure, that continuity, the more passes, Coetzee stepping up and carrying, McCloskey stepping up and carrying, Little with his dancing feet. We hadn't seen that for the last 3 weeks. And all of a sudden, Edinburgh hadn't, and it put them under pressure, started giving penalties away. I think they gave away 6 penalties in the last 30 minutes, and that just brought the pressure on them. Obviously typified by Willems last minute. It's not something he instinctively did it, didn't he? Put his hand out and
he knew
all day long, buddy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then one chance you get. So yeah, I think, and sometimes you can't put your finger on that, Dean, can you? It's just sort of a case of everybody dig in. We just got to play a bit here. We got to go, and they realised they weren't in the arm wrestle anymore because Edinburgh were getting away, and it paid off. Fair play to them.
Yeah, and if you look at McCloskey, so he had 17 carries, and that's only 2 less than Coetzee. And I think there's only one player in the Ulster squad who got anywhere near that. So, McCloskey was almost the 3rd highest carrier, which at 12, you'd expect him to carry a bit. But, not up near 20 carries. I think that showed just how important he was that day. Me
and Chief's girl are getting closer each week. She's now calling me Holster.
There it is.
This is outstanding stuff. Exactly right, Ulster. Nothing was working for Ulster, so be unpredictable and try anything. Maybe then something will stick. Well, yeah, good luck to them. They went out and won it. That's the way I look at it. In the end, Edinburgh done everything right, didn't they? Ground them down, took their chances.
Yeah.
And then Ulster went out and won it.
See, that's a funny one, because if you're Edinburgh, you're gutted because you should have won that game.
Yes,
you should have won that game, but at the same time, you played bloody well. You've played really, really well. I mean, Dean, when you're playing in a game like that, does it matter? Because I'm talking about the fan point of view, right? Does it matter if you lose going out firing, or if you lose and you just didn't really feel right? Does it matter as a player?
In that moment, it doesn't matter. I've never really been there, so it's hard to give you any good feedback. I've not played any semi-finals for a long, long time. But God, you losing just sucks, and that's all you see for a little bit. And then maybe you can take a little bit of glory away once you kind of look back and think, shit, we gave that everything we got, and give yourself a bit of a pat on the back. But in that moment, knowing the expectations of the fans and that they'd probably put on themselves as a team to have not pulled through, it would just be devastating.
Yeah.
Good.
I just need to bring this in because Ian Gilbert has now jumped into the lead of comment and the like. Drinking that much, Paul Williams' favourite player must be urine from Bristol Bears.
You know what? I think they used to have a yellow strip as well back in about 2016. That work over.
Yours would be fluoro, not yellow. I mean, like fluoro green.
Exactly. Come on, purple.
If Paul's on the Mountain Dew, it could get there. So let's look at. So Ulster came back brilliantly, and it was a fantastic match. But we have a final to look forward to. We have Leinster against Ulster. Andrew Brace in the middle. So not a Nigel Owens show for the final, but Andrew Brace gets the chance. What are we looking forward to? I want to go back to something, Sean, you were talking about in the analyst eye, and without giving away the whole thing. Leinster are very good at absorbing pressure.
Oh, amazing. We all think Leinster's power in attack is one thing, but this is a statistic. We have a set of bespoke statistics we've been working with the boys at Guinness PRO14 with, and this is a stopping percentage. So 78% of the time the opposition comes into their 22, they stop them getting a try.
That's incredible.
Can you believe that? So if you think, I don't know, on average, since we've been doing this, there's something like, say, 10 entries into the 22. So, nearly 8 out of 10 times, on average, Leinster stop the opposition scoring a try. Now,
and that's even with mauls from line-outs. And you think how difficult they are to stop.
If you go back to our Munster chat, if the Munster staff are astute enough to know that statistic, and you'd hope in professional rugby they work, if somebody like me and Murray and the boys can work that out, then that's probably the reason behind, them with a slightly pragmatic tactic of box kicking. They know that Leinster are very good at stopping people in there. Or you should flip it and say, well, do you know what? We'll work out a way of breaking that down. And that's what Dwayne Peel and Dan McFarlane and co are going to have to do this week. How do you break that down? Dare I say, we haven't seen many drop goals.
No.
What happened to the old drop goal? I was watching Invictus this week. Joel Stransky kicked a couple back in that World Cup final.
After they poisoned the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Whatever
it takes. 1% does it.
But you know what, though? You're so right, because the drop goal is the knockout weapon, isn't it? It comes out.
It's one way, mate. It's one way. But we've seen, and if we watch the... I'll come back to that now, Jared. If we've seen the North v South game, this is where those New Zealand players are a step ahead. They're very clinical when they get in the 22, and even if it's an attacking kick. And if you notice, Leinster, Murray does a good piece on attacking kicks. Leinster's kicking game has evolved, in recent season. They're not afraid to go to that sort of 6-tackle rugby league type kicks, and we saw Bowden Barrett push one through for Rick Ione in the North-South game, 10 meters out from the line. I mean, you've got to be quite innovative now, particularly if you're faced with that stat, Andy, of 78% of the time you get into Leinster's 22, they stop you scoring a try. It's a hell of a stat, isn't it?
Amazing.
And there's one thing I love Dean's point of view on this, that when you see a team who's very, very good at soaking pressure, and some teams are very comfortable in defense, and you can see them, they're quite happy just tackle because they've a very organized way of doing it, and you can see that they're talking to each other. They can do it all day long. When you're the attacking team playing against them, there comes a point where it becomes almost more likely that the attacking team will give up a penalty than that defending team soaking up pressure will break, right? And I'm just wondering that, I'll ask you straight, is that complete bollocks that I'm talking, or is that actually a real thing that I'm seeing?
That's a good question. I like that. Frank.
I think the new rules with the breakdown, it's so... I've seen the attacking teams, potentially give away a lot more. You've seen a lot more side entries, a lot more off your feet. The refs are really riffing that area, and you're getting... There's a lot. I mean, teams are really working hard on 2-man tackles and supporting jacklers over the ball, which makes them a lot stronger. So, building loads of phases, you tend to, if you're not quite organised enough in attack, you'll end up isolating yourself and having maybe a light cleaner who's a little bit tired, because I found personally that defense doesn't quite suck up as much energy as trying to be in attack and trying to get round the corner and trying to create speed on the ball. So it is really hard to build pressure. I mean, that's why Leinster's so successful, right? You've got such great defense communicating that they do create pressure on the attacking side somehow in that 22 zone.
I want to pick your one thing there. So what do you mean by saying a light cleaner who's a little bit tired? So explain to people what you mean by that.
Well, in attack, I mean, typically in 22s, we would have a massive focus on same way attack to then create space. In 22s, typically, if you kind of piston work, it can work if you're going back and forth. But if you kind of go 2 phases, come back 1, it's pointless because you're not creating any space for anyone. So as an attacking team, you need to hit your breakdown. You have your pod going around, carry, and then those guys on the floor have got to work hard to get up and get around and carry again if your backs aren't promoting. And so sometimes there can be a bit of a disconnect between your forwards and your backs. And if a back doesn't promote and you've got, I'm not going to say lazy, but a tired boy that's just hit a ruck and has got to fold around the corner to clean another ruck, he can quite often be late to that. And that half a second of not being over the ball and anticipation to clean, it creates a turnover opportunity for the defense.
This is one of the things that I remember a few years ago, Sean, like you said it just on this show, you love your stats. When we started getting into stats in rugby, like I still remember the first time an actual spreadsheet arrived full of statistics about games. And I was enthralled and I got really into this. And then the more and more I learned, the more and more I knew less, because there was a big bit missing. And the big bit missing was exactly, Dean, what you were just getting at, which is all of that work from the players getting up to clean out the next ruck, getting up to clean out the next ruck. That's just hugely, hugely important. And if the guys aren't getting there, it doesn't matter how many carries there are.
Yeah. There's also death by statistics as well. You know, there's a lot of stuff that is irrelevant or meaningless. You know, I think in the coach's world, Dean and I would know that has had to be tried to be translated into a measurable way of explaining to the players. So, you know, Dean can be told about his effectiveness. We talked about this last week, you know, that he's had a passive tackle or a missed tackle or whatever, you know. Making it more meaningful has been a challenge in professional coaching and getting the right statistics. It's why the Guinness PRO14 have charged Murray and I with the analyst's eye, is to find something a little bit different and that turns the eye and might just get people thinking a little bit differently. You know, we got some great stats on things like, I think I've told you, it's over 70% of the time Leinster have 14 or 15 guys on their feet in defence. Now, you know, that's a great statistic that is measured and monitored. And so when you think of that, it's no wonder it's hard to break them down, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, you know, you've got to flip that as well and say, right, okay, there must be space in the backfield.
Yeah.
You know,
if they're lined up straight.
The challenge is, how do we get there? Win races? How do we disguise that? How do we cut that line and make it hard for those guys to work around the corner, like Dean says? And do we relentlessly do that? And again, if you look at Ulster, because Edinburgh are a little bit similar to Leinster defensively, Ulster will be thinking of those things this week. I'd pick Stockdale on the wing, and I'd crossfield high bomb across to him. Big lad in the air, you know, let's challenge the young winger, was it Deegan, is it? Who had a great game on the weekend. The boy Hume had a great game for Ulster in the outside channel. Let's get it to him quickly. Use McCloskey as a foil, cut the line, get quick ball. They went back to the short side with McCloskey a lot against Edinburgh in the second half. Something Peely would have spoke about as an ex-scrum half at half time. So that's real good thinking on your feet. And then you can back these up. I could get Buddy's buy-in and his leadership group by showing in these statistics. This is the sort of thing that happens. This is a thing, the sort of thing I think we can work it out. Some of the stuff can get lost in translation, and I think, you know, some of the stuff is that you normally see on Sunday mornings in newspapers alongside, you know, in columns and bar charts, and then the journal's player rating. Well, put your fish and chips in that.
We're not going to. Player ratings are yeah. We've talked about this before. We're not going there now. Let's call it Leinster Ulster. Right. I want to call from the three of you. We'll go to the racket stringing wing first. Paul, call it.
Never bet against Leinster or the Crusaders, and you will not go far wrong.
Okay. Dino.
Ulster will win.
I'm tempted to kind of just go against Leinster because everyone's going to go Leinster.
No, just go for the glory call.
Yeah, just an all or nothing moment, the real Hail Mary. But I'll be done. I like Paul's theory. I'll go to Leinster as well.
Sean?
I think Ulster might have played their final. You know, that's the way I look at it. And Leinster haven't fired yet. Their chance to go out was last week. You know, so I can't see them getting it wrong in the final. They're too experienced. Be interesting though, because Ulster have to go out and win it. So I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be. I'm hoping it's not just a one-sided affair or a damp squib, and I don't think Ulster will let it be a damp squib. So let's enjoy it. And but I will go Leinster. Yeah.
Okay, so before we move off the final itself, let's talk fly halves. So we're going to look at next week and next week. Adam, you've been too quiet for a while.
Good can of Guinness.
Well done.
Great.
I like that.
Failure in the street to the chippy.
So we've had a bit of talk about miss and fly halves this weekend, because Owen Farrell decided to do something very silly. And this has been coming. We all know it's been coming, but the kindest thing I can say is that maybe it's better that he doesn't use his arms, because apparently this is what happens. But he's got 5 games for it. He's going to miss the Leinster European semi-final. It's not good. Is there anything is there any controversy here? Anyone thinks this is too long, too short? Drop in.
I think the unusual bit with it is that people were expecting a longer ban because everyone thinks that he's got a bad record for tackling, which he has, but he was never punished for those tackles. So, right, in people's heads, everyone thinks he's had like 900 reds and 40 yellows because he hasn't, because most of his Venus de Milo tackles without the arms, for anyone who's into Renaissance art, he wasn't pulled up for those tackles. So they say, he looked like he's got a clean record. Therefore, it's, 10 down to 5?
10 down to 5. I think it was pretty sure Charlie Morgan in the Telegraph did a piece on that very thing. Said his record when it comes to cards is actually extraordinarily good. Dean?
Yeah, it's just not in our perception, though, is it? I don't know. I would have given him everything.
It's a bad tackle, man.
Yeah, it is a shock, and I've always had this thing about how the English really seem to get off pretty lightly when it comes to judiciary kind of stuff.
Very good lawyers, Dean. Very good lawyers.
It's true. I mean, we spoke when I had my one red card. I had our backs coach in there as my lawyer on a Skype call that was cutting out every 3 minutes. So the guy was absolutely. He was an older chap and wanted nothing to do with me and just gave me the full kind of thing for like I've got a similar ban to him for 2 yellow cards and one was like a team infringement. I just there's just no consistency whatsoever when it comes to with this judiciary system, and I feel like especially the big time elite English boys get it all with a silver spoon and get off pretty lightly.
I think one thing that doesn't help is this halving of these sentences, because it's got to the point now where it doesn't even matter what the initial thing was. Everyone knows it's half, and it sort of defeats the object. They'd be better off just bringing it all down to 6 weeks and then getting a week off. It's when these things come down by half, because you've walked your mother's dog twice. It's annoying.
But if you talk about, look, Farrell, it was a really unfortunate incident. And the way I'll say unfortunate, not for Owen Farrell, but the player he tackled. Okay, so Charlie Atkinson, he was only 18. It's his second senior appearance. Now, that was just a horrible coincidence, but that's what happened. I thought the referee handled it well. Saying, listen, sorry, straight to the lower pocket. You're gone. You could tell Owen Farrell immediately knew it was bad. You can actually hear him on the audio. But Paul, I think you've nailed it. Our perception is different to what the cards records say it is. Yeah. And that's where actually, weirdly, the fact that the record has, and this is my personal opinion, not backed up what the reality of his actions have been on the field, has actually brought him to that 10 down to 5.
Yeah, exactly. It's, he hasn't been punished for a lot of them. I can think of at least 3. One against Wales that was, no arm at all, looked on the bottom of the jaw. He was fortunate that he did most of them on that kind of cusp period where the high tackles weren't quite being officiated like they are now. So maybe sort of 3 or 4 years ago, if those hits had happened now, he would have been treated far more severely.
I'm sort of keeping my powder dry because I'm going through a raft of emotions here.
Yeah, I know. I can see him in the corner. It looks like he's about to go
going from seething to sympathetic to apathetic.
Have you ever, just to give you more time to dwell, Grumpy Sean, have you ever seen the film Zidane where the entire film is just watching Zinedine Zidane in a match for Real Madrid.
No.
That's what I've been doing to Sean for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just watching it.
No, he's been
Well,
squirming in the corner.
Because there's a couple of things here for me, right? And bear with me.
He's got his head in his hands. I like this.
No, I get the perception bit, this, that, and the other, but he has form, whether it's been on record or not. He's tackled high. And so he deserved to be punished. You know, this guy was concussed, and there was, for my money, intent. He didn't slow down. So he's got to go, and he's got to get a maximum ban. That said, as a coach, that fire in Farrell's belly, I quite like. I don't want to take it out of him. You know, he's a tough. If he's playing in a red shirt for the Lions next year, and my name's just been changed to Really Grumpy Sean, well done, Adam. If he's in a red shirt for the Lions, two things. One, I'd be delighted, right? As a Welshman, to have Farrell there and his fight and his aggression and his ability. But if he does that in the second test, when we won test up, like Sonny Bill did in New Zealand, gets sent off, we got a problem, right? So there's that. He's got to start dropping his technique, but we don't want to take the fire out of his belly. What I don't get is the mitigating circumstance and the irregularity of the judiciary system. We're not lawyers, so we don't fully understand it, but to go from 10 to 5 because Eddie Jones and Matt McCall, of course Matt McCall's going to write a nice letter about him, isn't he? And so is bloody Eddie Jones. They got internationals coming up. But if you listen to Pat Lam, we were talking with Buddy off Pat Lam last night about the, injustice of Saili, who was it? Piatau, who was defending himself against 2 6'6" guys coming at him and punching him. So he's defended himself and punched him and got the same 3 weeks for that. And he's had 5 concussions, so he's protecting himself and fighting because these 2 guys came at him. He's had the same as the perpetrators, 3 weeks for defending himself, 3 weeks. Farrell gets 5 weeks. George North, for his incident, had 4 weeks. I don't get this, right? Because let me tell you quick, I put on Twitter today, we played Leicester Tigers in the Heineken Cup. And I remember a prop Italian-Argentinian called Moreno was coming for Gavin Henson, blindside cheap shot him. He's coming to kill him, right? And Gav, so talented, right, Henson, not only with the ball, but sees him coming out of this eye, has the awareness of space and time to turn as if he's turning with the ball and catches him flush on the jaw with his elbow, right? Just really subtly, bang, like that, in self-defense. Moreno goes down, boom, he's out, right? Subtle as you like. Gav gets 10 weeks.
Yeah, I remember that. That's incredible. 10 weeks.
Now listen to this mitigating circumstances. The Ospreys hired these highbrow lawyers and they built a case. He hadn't had a poor record. His disciplinary was good. His good behaviour, apologised, and all that mitigating. Went over to Dublin, heard the case again. He got upped by 1 week to 11 weeks.
No.
Yeah. Is this why Sean O'Connor? No, it was the build-up. Yeah, that was the build-up.
Did he bring the worst biscuits ever to a hearing?
Got upped by a week. You imagine?
Exactly.
I'd bring bourbons.
Oh man, that's incredible, isn't it? You think 10 weeks, double that Farrell hit.
But let's go into the stuff. So there's things we don't get about the disciplinary process, and some of it is because we're not lawyers, right?
That's right.
And I'm not being flippant here. I mean that literally. We're not lawyers. We're not judges. We're not QCs. And the rugby disciplinary process is built around a very, very legalistic process. Okay. And if you've ever taken the time, and some of us on this podcast have taken the time, read through the long form judgments. It's like reading a court case.
Yeah,
it genuinely is.
What is hard is proving the intent of things, isn't it?
But never mind intent, Paul. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but this is where I have a difficulty with when we see statements like, well, the charity work he does is really good. And you're going, what the hell does that have to do with him knocking out an 18-year-old in a rugby pitch with a big stiff arm? Nothing.
I know. It's not like he knocked him out at the charity dinner. That's the thing. If he If he sparked him out at the charity dinner, that's fine. It's part of it. I don't understand what it's got to do with it. That's my issue with it all. If it's not related, don't put it in there. Or if, and more than that, it sounds so stupid. Even if it was part of the decision, just don't put it in the press release because it looks.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned it, Paul, because that was my first instinct. I'd go the Mark McCall comment, Eddie Jones. Fair enough. They're giving a rugby-related character reference. You're putting in the charity. No, that just doesn't sit well with me. Yeah. Dean, you look as if you're chomping at the bit here.
No, I couldn't get into it anymore of how ridiculous it is and how much of an overhaul the whole yellow red card judiciary system just needs to change. And World Rugby, it's something that needs to be really looked at. It needs to be black and white. It doesn't need to be legal by any means. It just needs to be, if you do the crime, you do the time. I think to a certain extent that's kind of what's needed because it is so, it's so grey. There's so many blurred lines between it all with all this lawyer kind of perspectives on it all, and that's not rugby. I don't know. It's frustrating. We've been through it. We've lost players for longer times at Benetton than we know we should have because the club actually didn't have the money to put lawyers forward. So no one at the club ever got represented by a lawyer, which potentially could have saved us loads of time. I actually personally in my contract, I almost, thankfully it didn't happen in the end, but had a clause in my contract that I can get deducted up to 60% of my wage for every week that I'm banned or something like that. And the club mentioned it to me. They're like, hey, listen, that was a bit of a dick move from the club, I'll be real honest. But they threatened me with that because just to make sure that they could get a win on a little something else because they could do that. So there's a lot on the line with all this kind of this stuff that goes on that probably other people don't quite understand as well.
That's probably why the RFU were nearly bankrupt. That's all going on, these lawyers.
Oh, here we go. Right, some comments been dropped in. Fred Healy, I agree with Paul Williams for once.
Once.
Just a bit of a backhanded one there. The amount of times Farrell has got away with reds is incredible. I'd go with cards, definitely. Simon Harris, does not matter. It was a shocker, plain and simple. Not sending the right message out to parents to push their children into the game. Chiefs girl, Farrell is serial offender for high shots and shoulder charges, always gets away with it. It's like he is Teflon, especially, he pisses me off, especially if it's an Islander who doesn't get 3 months. So hold on that point there. There's definitely a perception issue there. We saw it in the World Cup where, lads, help me out. Who was the England player against the USA who got off with that hit early on in the competition? The QC got him on.
Was it the 7, wasn't it? What's his name?
I can't remember. But yeah, it's one of those where a very talented, probably highly paid QC got a very good result for England that day. That's what I'll say. Dennis Murray, November 18 series was a watershed moment for Farrell's tackling. Took a player out against SA, pulled up a bit by World Rugby, then did it again next week, no problem. Producer Adam, there's a lot of comments here. Fred Healy, Farrell got away with no arms, high tackles. There's a lot of comments. So we know Farrell. There's more comments.
No, this has got people riled up.
Yeah,
it does.
It was something I thought about, and I mean, if that was an Islander, that's they're not thinking twice about giving him the full 10 weeks there.
Seriously, you wouldn't see him until next summer. Yeah,
it's a really risky kind of throwing the race card into it all, but it's a real reality of I think the Island boys.
Who's the Connacht boy? Papa Lee.
Papa Lee.
What did he get?
Actually, do you know what? I don't know. Adam, fact check.
Oh, straight in.
Fact check. So he received a sentence that's being appealed at the moment. So that is running its course. So we're only talking to the 5 of us. So
if you have another can of Guinness,
many,
let us know.
Give him another Guinness.
This many. No. Okay.
Can't
fine,
take
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
I can't.
He's not
It'd be
forthcoming.
really interesting for this chat, wouldn't it, when that comes out? If we
Yeah.
back
But-
reference it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of the processes that have happened recently as well that we've process in place that they use in Super Rugby as well, where there's a judicial officer who oversees. This has just come in recently. Judicial officer oversees the citing or the red card and says, okay, we've looked at the facts, we reviewed this. The sentence is X. They present that to the club. Are you willing to accept it? And if they're not willing to accept it, then it goes to a full hearing.
Right.
So it's a way to speed up the process.
That makes more sense.
We were looking at this pre-COVID, and they were doing it. They have done it in Super Rugby. I want to say from a couple of years at this point now. Again, it's just because of the long distances that are involved between, people always kind of say, look, there's different disciplinary committees in Pro14. Everyone's in the same time zone. When you need to get a neutral disciplinary committee to meet in Super Rugby, and you're across 18 time zones, it really slows down the process, which is why they looked at that. So World Rugby have allowed that. But yes, just to the 2 red cards for Connacht, they were dealt with in that same way George North, his was dealt with a judicial officer and stuff like that. He got 4 weeks. But I think there's a bit more of a conversation to go on the Connacht decision.
All right.
Right. There we
Okay.
are.
So watch this space. 2 cents rugby. Thank you for my fact check appeal. It was Piers Francis.
Oh, that's
Well
right.
done.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Excellent. That's educated viewers. This is great. In the interest of making sure that we cover all things, it's very interesting to see Cian Tracy from the Irish Independent report that perhaps Leinster might rest Jonathan Sexton for the final. That's purely, I presume, just to make sure that it's in sympathy for any other fly halves who might be missing from games this weekend. That's all that might be happening. It is part of this weird COVID world that because we've got these fixtures crammed back to back to back. Sexton's 35. He's been playing the last couple of weeks. Paul, what do you think we're looking at here? I mean, we're talking here. We have no knowledge of what the teams might be. I'm referring to a report. That's all.
And we also don't know. We also don't know if he's taken a knock. The big thing, he is 35 years old. There's still an awful lot of rugby to be played. If Leinster didn't have the squad depth that they've got, then they probably would play him. But Leinster have got a squad depth that'll give you the bends. I mean, it's ridiculous. They could pick 3 teams, so they can do what they like, and it'll still be a strong squad. So it's not like saying Connacht or dropping Johnny Sexton. They would never do that. Leinster can afford to. He's their player. It's up to them.
Connacht fans, for that comment, the Russians know where Paul is. That's all
I keep listening out for Russian accents.
But
I think they will. For what it's worth, I think they will.
Do you think so?
I think they're perennial finalists, perennial winners. I think if they beat Ulster and Sexton isn't in the 23, he still gets a winner's medal. I think they've managed their squad like this in the past really well under other coaches. And it's not like they've got nobody to replace. I think Ross Byrne is a real good replacement. He's very, very good. And you've got enough players. I think they'll do the same around the team. I really do. They're that confident in their squad and that good. And dare I say, and Ulster fans don't take this the wrong way, especially now it's Ulster. You think back to a couple of weeks ago, they beat Ulster at the canter, really, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think they'll pick a similar side to that game. I really do, because they've got Europe coming up.
And as a coach, Sean, would you do the same?
No.
No.
No, mate. No, mate. I go fully loaded. I really would. And I tell you what, another reason why I do it for this one, Dino, is that this isn't like a regular final week. If it was a regular final week and then we had Europe as well, it'll be at an end of a season where the boys will be pretty tired. Yeah. We're in a situation here where they're not. They've had a pre-season, so they can go back to back. You know, I really do think that. I think it's just perhaps his age. He's one player that may be fard. He's another they may protect. You know, for Europe, just the slightly older ones who might run the risk of a knock and a game comes quite quickly after it. That's all. But I think the rest of it is. But it is a strange week, you know, because they should be quite fresh, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. I'll just throw up this. James Cowan is resting Johnny Sexton disrespectful towards Ulster. I'm going to say it's just there is more games to come. And both sides of games, there's going to be, you know, Toulouse against Ulster going to be a cracker. Leinster Saracens is going to be a cracker. Both teams need to manage the squads. Leinster probably have the depth, like Paul says, to do it. And you know what? If you're Ulster, if you see it as being disrespectful and you're in that dressing room, you use that.
Well,
you
exactly.
absolutely use that.
Yeah, and this isn't the end of the season. It's a weird season, you know. It's the sort of middle of the start of the end of the start of the. It's you know, it's all different, isn't it? So
100%. So let's go into just before we start sliding out of the show for the evening. There were some more awards. We went through some last week. Caelan Doris got the next gen star of the season that was announced, I think, today. He's a very, very good rugby player.
He's really good.
I'm not surprised to see him win this. Sean, Caelan Doris is good at rugby, and he's very young.
Yeah, like Ireland fans, Leinster fans will know all about Caelan Doris. But for our non-Irish fans, this is one of a plethora of back rowers. Forget back rowers, players that Leinster have coming through that you really should start watching. I mean, I'd spent 2 hours looking at Will Connors this week, right? Now there's another one, 7, vying for a place with Josh van der Vliet. He's amazing, right? You've got Max Deegan, right? Max Deegan's another one. Ryan Baird, the second row, Kelleher, the hooker. The list goes on. So, you know, there's a lot of young players, a lot of Leinster young players, but across the league. And Caelan Doris has got the nod for next gen, and rightly so. He was brilliant last week. We've got a piece on him in Analyst Eye tomorrow evening, so watch out for Murray's Kinsella's piece on him. But he does a lot more than meets the eye. I think what Analyst Eye does is it'll show in a lot more detail what players like Caelan Doris, who you don't know, and then there's a position that does unseen things. We're trying to give kudos. Dean be chuffed about things like that, because it's always the 10s that we talk about, or the wingers that score the tries, or the goal kicker. These boys have a lot more instances and a lot more impact subtly in the game. So he deserves it in a good crop. But it was an interesting selection, wasn't it? The Dream Team. We got a chance to vote. The caveat is, I suppose, that there were a set of nominations per position. So people might say, why isn't Johnny Sexton in? Why isn't Alan Wynne-Jones in? Well, there was a selection of nominations and you had to pick from them.
So let's talk about the Dream Team. So Dream Team for the season. Flash it up. Blair Kinghorn, Monty Ioane, Ray Lilo, Stuart McCluskey, Duane van der Merwe, Jaco van der Walt, John Cooney in the overrated backs. Dean Wood, Monty Ioane, he's a hell of a player.
Fab player.
He's incredible. He is so fast. He really is. I mean, he's not got a real good top end, but his acceleration, his footwork, and those kind of one-on-one situations, incredible. And we're so lucky with him and Tuva, the Fijian winger, on the other wing at Benetton. They've completely changed our game there at Benetton, just having some X factor out there and kind of can give the ball to them if you're in a bit of trouble, and they always seem to find some yards. Or Monty, even on defense, has folded a couple of boys in too. He can really hit.
They really did change your game plan, actually, didn't they? Give you a proper counter-attack from deep, didn't they?
Yeah, I think actually I read your article about it a year or so ago about the back three with Jaden and those two.
Yeah, I did. I did a bit on them because it changed in like about 2 months from just banging balls back deep to running them back and scoring sort of 50-meter tries.
Isn't it a credit to the Guinness PRO14 that we all talk about Leinster? There isn't one Leinster back in that Dream Team.
I know. Yeah, think of that.
Right. there's some pretty talented ones, aren't there? I think
Yeah.
Rayleigh Lowe, for me, would be a questionable one. I don't know about that. Maybe he plays all the time, to be fair, and he is a big line breaker. But you can't really argue with the halfbacks. Can't argue with your man
Duan.
crush, your new man crush, Duan. Monty.
Yeah.
Monty's going to be in the Italy squad. Blair King, Hongsman, and McCloskey. So yeah, and then again, well, there's that boy Connors. Look at Max Deegan. So we mentioned the next 10, Kylan Doris. He's not even in the back row because Bill Matt has been sensational before lockdown.
Well, weirdly, that is, as we were saying earlier, that is pretty much the team I picked. Bar maybe one or two. I can't remember all of my selections, but they were the obvious choices. They just stood out so much. Yeah. Especially Mata. God.
Yeah, it was a shame he didn't quite front for Edinburgh on the weekend.
Yeah. Can't do it every week, can you?
No, and I think we expect him to do it. But see, dream teams are great. You can always just. This is what I miss about actually meeting the lads in the pub. It's for things like that. Just have the chats. There's been a couple of questions in throughout the show about the North versus South game. Okay. We'll touch on that. Carrying, Schoeman, Dweba, and Brown. There's a bit of ball carrying there.
Oh,
that would work pretty well,
especially with Brown in the last month.
Oh,
well, he scores tries from 22 meters out.
That try was so good.
He's the new Taniela Tupou.
Dweba scores tries, obviously from the maul, but his try scoring record's up there. With Rob Herring, he's been good, and Schoeman, although he's under pressure, Schoeman, isn't he, at Edinburgh?
He is, isn't he? He was dropped, wasn't he? Not dropped, nudge to the bench.
Yeah, that boy's really coming through. So it just goes to show they got depth coming in Edinburgh. Maybe next year.
Yeah.
So a couple of comments here. So Chiefs Girl, quickly before you go, what you guys think of the North versus South? That was the kinder comment, because the James Reed comment was that the North-South game on Saturday morning was like a glorious baptism to wash away the rugby sins from Leicester Munster the night before. We've already been straight with you that said Leinster Munster wasn't not the greatest game of rugby ever, but sometimes Knockout Rugby does that. North versus South was wonderful.
Sexual rugby is what it was. It was unbelievable. I think it's one of the best games of the season. It was fantastic.
There was a bit in the middle where I thought it was going to get a bit loose. Do you remember at the very end of the Super Rugby Aotearoa season, Sean?
Yes.
Where you were going,
he didn't like.
If it doesn't mean anything, then I don't care how many times they throw her in the ball. And there was just a little 20 minutes where it looked like that, and then it looked like they picked it up and said, "Actually, we want to win this."
Yeah, I think, but that goes to show what's in those players. I mean, Dean's better placed to answer this, but it shows what's in their character, what's in their upbringing, what they're capable of at the highest level. That's what it said to me. When you go back now, anybody who hasn't seen it, who's listening, watching, watch a game. Maybe watch the final or watch a bit of Gallagher Premiership or a bit of Top 14 and then quickly watch the highlights of North v South. Flick over to YouTube and watch it and you'll go, oh my God.
Different sport.
That's a different game.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's like, boo, boo, boo. Don't see I watched some of the Gallagher Premiership last night. The ball has been, and in the week, the ball's been dropped, the knock-ons, is turgid stuff, right? And of course, Leinster Munster wasn't great, but Edinburgh also was fantastic. But you watch this, everything sticks.
Yeah.
Everything sticks. Everything's sympathetic. It's in the air for them to hit onto at pace. All the clean-outs are dynamic. All the scrum half passes are away. Their footwork is amazing. Their tackles are explosive. And when you put that all together all the time in a game, it's a different game. That's what I saw.
Yeah, and as I've said before, that's why the All Blacks are consistently the best team in the world, because all their players are used to operating the forwards and the backs at that level. They're all used to handling those passes at 100 miles an hour. So even under pressure at Test rugby, at 50%, they're still better than you. And it's that Super Rugby upbringing where they can all just fling a miss two and catch at pace. It's fantastic. I'm available.
Were you surprised at the standard of it? It was always billed. It was going to be. Were you surprised with how good it was?
Yeah, I thought it would be a little bit. Well, I mean, it wasn't not flary. I guess I thought you'd probably would have seen a few more kind of round the back offloads and just NFL passes. I just kind of expected to see a little bit more crazy things, but why would you want to see it? It's more entertaining watching just the purest form of rugby. Like, that was just incredible. I don't know, I can't add anything to what you said in terms of just how high the quality of the whole game was. It's pretty special, that kind of footy, and it's strange to kind of see the level of the Super Rugby. Like, where does it all seems to level out at international level, but that competition is just so much better. So I mean, will the All Blacks be that much better than the rest of the world come November? I don't think so.
Do you know what really, really, really got to me? When they were going through the teams at the start, the ages of some of the key players.
They were kids. Yeah.
They were kids. It was disgusting.
And you know what? When the All Black squad came out there, and you sort of looked at it and you went,
It makes you feel sick, doesn't it, when you look at it? And what's bad is that you see some of the players that you know who aren't going to play at all, and they're amazing. And when Boshier can't even get in there, and he's the season he's had, he's not even in the squad. Oh my God!
Yeah, Peter Garvey, North versus South, unreal skills and display for the world to see. Yeah, and you're right. And Dean, James O'Brien, North versus South rugby porn. There was a bit of that where definitely I thought we were going to get into a game where there was stuff being thrown around and it didn't matter, and then just something clicked. It was great. Hopefully, you can see why when amateur turned to professional, they got rid of a game like that, because someone somewhere is going, who's paying for my players to get injured? Well, this year we know that there's a reason to have a game like that, and hopefully this is something we keep from COVID, because it was absolutely brilliant.
Someone mooted a 3-game series. I think that'd really turn it up.
A state of origin type thing. Yeah,
exactly. Awesome. It'd be amazing. If that is the Louvre of rugby, and then that is where all the best pieces are, and you want to go in there and have a little look around every day.
Who's the Mona Lisa?
Yeah, exactly. It is, isn't it? You just every player, like, oh my God, look at that.
Yeah, I mean, Peel of Ash, could you do equivalent in other places? North England against South England. I think people could do that.
That could happen. You could do East versus West in Wales.
Yeah, North, South, and Ireland might just bring us somewhere we don't want to go, so we're not going there.
No, whoa.
Yeah, cut that out.
Yeah. I think this is where I sign off in an awkward moment.
We
want to come in because there was a great question sent in by Twitter just before the show, right, from Gav Sadlier. So, Gav, fair play. If each member of the podcast would be before a disciplinary committee, what would it be for? And what biscuits would they bring for the commissioners? I think we have to call it on ourselves. Okay,
I'll go first. Look, I'd probably get pulled in for bullying Paul Williams in public on this podcast.
Rightly so as well.
And I'd take in a selection of either bourbons or custard creams.
I think I would be taken in for drinking too much artificial sweetener, and I would take in biscuits, Russian biscuits laced with polonium, and just wipe out the committee and then just walk out scot-free.
Yeah, buddy.
God, I don't even know where to start with this one. I was thinking more the playing days. It would certainly be done for abusing a referee.
Abusing a referee, that'll do, yeah.
And probably still would be now, yelling from the stands, abuse some ref. And I'll probably take him some Anzac biscuits. Good New Zealand man.
What about you?
I think I'd be pulled up for making too many irrelevant points around
poor Wi-Fi.
Actually, yeah, now you're on it. For crap Wi-Fi where I disappear from the show. Yeah, exactly. And what I would have to bring, I'd have to bring something from. Oh, do you remember those ones in the little foil wrappers, Viscounts?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, little mint twins.
80s. I like that.
Viscounts. Yes.
I've seen 2 cents rugby and Chiefs Guild toffee pops. Oh, one of the best biscuits from my childhood.
There you go. Remember
They're
them.
so good. Oof.
Wow.
Good question.
That's-
40.
Our followers,
That's
our
harsh.
listeners, they've been awesome tonight, haven't they? They've,
Really good.
They've
fair
sort of
play.
joined in the banter, which has been great, And thanks to the regulars, thanks to the new guys, Scoop neck.
better than a turtleneck.
Needless to
Or
say,
you
our
just wait.
producers joined in the banter more than anybody else.
Oh, very good.
Right. We're done. Thank you, producer Adam Redmond, who's been on form tonight. Duan, definitely comment tonight. One last thing. Sorry, we haven't chosen the comment of the night. What was the comment of the night? For the bear hug stash.
Probably that question we've just read.
Adam, it's your call. Pop up with whatever the winner is.
Oh, there we go. Chiefs girls won it. Right, there we go. That's what it is.
You're in.
Adam is paying for postage, I think. Chiefs girl, I like Redmond, our own rugby comedian with the quick wit. Yes, we have. That was great fun. I enjoyed that. We have the Guinness PRO14 final to look forward to this weekend, 7:35 p.m. in our time zone, wherever you are watching, whether it be Port Talbot or Pembrokeshire or wherever Chiefs girl you are right now. We've enjoyed having you along for the ride. Thank you, Dean Budd. Thank you, Paul Williams. Thank you, Sean Holley. Thank you, Bear Hug, for sponsoring the best comment. Thank you, Paul Redmond. Yeah, I'm Andy McGeady. We're done. We'll talk to you soon.
They call me cheetah, 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 cheetah. Alla mamma cheetah, cheetah, cheetah.